Jamie H. writes, I don't do enough journaling on my pages, and I want to get better about it. However, I simply can't make myself write directly on the layout, because it never looks right. Sometimes the journaling on the layout is difficult to read. When I try to use tags or journaling cards, they don't always look cohesive with the rest of the page, and often there's a lot of layout real estate just left bare, without writing to take up the space. Am I the only one with this problem? Glitter Girl, can you help Jamie H. jinx those journaling jitters?
Of course I can. I want to say if this is a question that really applies to you, the best thing I can suggest right now is to head straight into the workshop section of the store and sign up for Scrapbooking from the Soul by Jill Sproat. It's a mini workshop at 2 Peas in a Bucket, so it's $12. It has 3 chapters with videos and PDFs and beautiful layouts, and it's all about journaling for scrapbooking. It's an amazing resource. It's not very expensive, and so I would really suggest if journaling is something you want to work on improving, that would be the thing that would really help you. But I'll see what I can do in just one episode today, and I'm starting with a single photo that I have a story to go with, and it's an old Polaroid, an original old 80s Polaroid, and I have in my head what I'm going to write, and it's something that I've jotted down in my journal over the years, but I haven't sat down and written and revised it today. So it is a story that's been on my mind at some point, but nothing that I don't have a draft that's just out of camera here or anything like that. Then because this is a Christmas photo and the story that I am going to tell does relate to Christmas, then I've pulled out mostly some Christmas supplies plus a few things that are more everyday to bring it back to not being just Christmassy. So the everyday things are these fabric corners from Amy Tangerine and these Evilicious everyday stickers that are all circles. Then everything else is pretty Christmassy. Some different rhinestones. These are My Mind's Eye. These are Glitz. They're the larger printed size. Some Bella Boulevard stickers. Journaling boxes from American Crafts Christmas line called Peppermint Express. And then I'm going to use quite a bit from the Hello December collection by Glitz Design. And I'll just give you a quick look. I'm not going to use the whole collection, obviously, but I'll just give you a look through the collection pack so you can see what that collection looks like. And then if it is something you want to use this December, you'll have that option. So one of my first suggestions is that if you want to improve the way the journaling works on your pages, is to change that mindset that journaling comes last. And I think this is something that has stayed with us for a long time, from the crossover of just keeping photo albums into the creative craft we now all know as scrapbooking. And that's because when we kept photo albums, we just tended to put the photos in, and maybe we added a little caption, or maybe nothing at all, and we just put the book or the photo in a book so it would be nice and safe. And if you want to make sure that your albums are telling stories, then that comes with thought. It doesn't happen by accident. It certainly happens by making progress and trying new things, and some things will work and some things will not, and those things are not exactly the same for every scrapbooker out there. So I'm going to give you a few different suggestions as I go with today's layout, and I want you to give anything that sounds good to you a try, and don't feel like you have to try them all at once. It's more like a bullet pointed list of different things you can try, different things that have worked for me, and I can certainly say that my journaling has changed a lot from when I first started scrapbooking, so I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go. Although I've chosen quite a few supplies, and I know that there's a variety in there, when I gathered the supplies, I'm looking at things like color and pattern and just things that catch my eye. But when I start to actually pick what's going to go on the page, I'm already thinking about the journaling. So in this case, when I'm looking at pattern papers, I'm looking at what can I write on and what can I not. So of course, there's no hard rules when I'm saying what can you write on and what can you not. Of course, your pen will still write on it. It's absolutely fine. But what I mean is, where will things be legible for me and work with my style. So I know that I could use something like this and write on the diagonal, but it would be very different than most of the pages in my album. And what I tend to use diagonals and bold prints like this for is a frame around the edge, so I'm not going to write on that one. I also really wanted to include this floral. I like it on that red striped background, but this is a page that if I write on this pattern, it's not going to be very easy to read. So I'm using that again as something in the background and not the page or the paper that I'm going to write on. Then I have a pattern that I've cut down to a smaller size, and that includes writing. I'm not going to add more writing in between all those words. I'm going to let the pattern speak as the pattern itself. So that again is something I'm not going to write on, which means I need to get over to the patterns that I could write on. So I have this bit of wood grain pattern paper from the same collection. That's paler. It is still patterned, but it's something that I could write on because it doesn't have a lot of color going on, and you would be able to read whatever I wrote on top of that with either a black or brown journaling pen. Then I also have two journaling boxes. I'm not going to use both of them, but I'm going to choose one or the other. And I show you both of them because there's a difference here, and there are some things to keep in mind. They're both from the same cut-apart sheet, but the most obvious difference is that one has lines and one does not. So this suits different styles of what you might want to include on the page. If you worry about the look of your handwriting on the page because you feel you don't write straight or you don't have evenly spaced lines, then using cards that have a lined pattern, so you can just write on the lines, can really help. However, you need to be aware of how big your natural handwriting is and whether it will work with a given set of lines or not. So this line to me is very narrow, and I would either use this for something where I'm going to purposely write smaller and fill in lots of writing for an extended story in a finite amount of space. Or if I wrote at kind of the more natural style that comes out of the pen when I start to write, I would skip and write on every other line so that it would be a little bit easier to read. But then you're not going to get nearly as much in terms of how many words are going to fit there, of course, if I'm only writing on every second line. In that case, it might be better to use a card that doesn't have lines, because then I can use the natural spacing and size of my writing rather than feeling that it needs to be neatly on all the lines. I can also, with a blank card or a pattern that doesn't have lines, go in and pencil the lines, and what I always find is easiest is if I start at the bottom with my ruler and then figure out how wide my line should be and mark up to the top, because then if I just have the top line have a little bit of extra room, it works out a lot easier than if I try and work down to the bottom and then I have this awkward bit where I can't get the spacing exactly right at the end. For some reason, almost always the having the empty space at the top tends to be a more flattering design. So if I use a pencil, then I start from the bottom. And a little secret of what worked for me over the years was that when I first started handwriting on my pages, I used pencil pretty much every layout. Eventually, I got more confident with it, and I knew what space my handwriting would take up, because after lots of practice, after lots of writing on pages, it became more predictable to my own eye. But I definitely penciled in lines for years, so please don't feel that if writing on the page is still a challenge to you that there's anything wrong with penciling in lines or using stamps that have lines or journaling cards that have lines. It's absolutely what it's there for, so please go ahead and use that if it's going to help you. But if you feel that the lines are not the right spacing for the size of your handwriting, then go ahead and use something that doesn't have lines. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this together with my photo and then figure out exactly what I'm going to write and where. At this point, I'm ready to put my journaling on the page. I know I have this amount of space to write for sure, and if that's not enough, then I can work with some more space here. I could add in a shorter journaling block that would go over here in an L shape, so I could continue this horizontal flow across the page here. Or I can leave it as just this much and then add embellishment over here. So I have a little bit of freedom there, and I, at this point, would start to think about what I'm going to write, and is this something that I'm going to draft out on another piece of paper and then put onto the page, or whether I'm just going to write it straight from my head onto the layout. And that is something that I change up from page to page. Sometimes I write straight on the page, sometimes I sit down and I write it and I look at it and revise it. I also keep a journal that's just my own writings, that isn't fancy and scrapbooky in any way. It's just a plain journal with messy handwriting in it, and I often will use things that I've written in there and adapt them for my scrapbook page journaling, so that it's had a little time in between when I've originally written those words and when I'm going to put it on the page. Each of those three different ways, whether I draft it and immediately revise it and put it on the page, whether I write it straight on the page without any drafting, or whether I take something that I've written before and had a gap in the time and then revise that to put on the page. Each of those gives me a different style of journaling in my finished piece. So I tend to use the longer process with things that are more serious, that require more thought, things I really want to be a bit more reflective about, and things that I'm going to write straight on the page tend to be the things that are more observing just what's happening, where we've been, who was there, that sort of thing. So I have a whole range of techniques, and I really do advise that you don't feel that there's just one way to improve your journaling. The key to improving writing of any kind is practice in all sorts of different ways. So that's what I would suggest at this point in making your page. The journaling I've included in this box certainly describes the photo and uses the photo as a storytelling device, but attempts to bring your attention to some of the smaller details. So instead of feeling the need to write everything in complete sentences or to put it in a list, there's a little bit of a mix, and I list out a few things that appear in the photo that need a little bit of additional context. The fact that the ages of different people in the photo, for example, one of the people in the picture was home for the holidays from college. A little bit of explanation of one of the presents in the Christmas chaos here is that someone apparently received an upright vacuum cleaner for Christmas that year, and just kind of the funniness of seeing that as something that's there and covered in gift wrap. And then the story closes with the fact that this is a toddler version of me and my exceptionally rude, grabby hands at Christmas. But the fact that what it always makes me remember is how much I was in love with the magic of just all of everything Christmas, and that I hope that I certainly have far more manners than that now, but that at least, even though the picture makes me cringe just a teeny bit, that I know that it was coming from a good place, even though the picture makes it look like I was a terribly, terribly rude toddler. So I've included all those different things that come from different elements I can see in the photo, but tried to make it sound as though I'm still telling a story. So it doesn't feel just like a list in this photo you will see. It's not that at all. I've tried to bring in an introduction. So here I've started with something really simple. It doesn't matter how many years go by, this photo still makes me laugh. And that is the essence of why I hadn't scrapbooked that photo yet. Every time I came to it in my box of photos, I would laugh and then go on to the next thing. So I'm using something that's really easy to introduce your writing. Don't feel that the first line has to be something that's going to start a classic that's going to be read in libraries all over the world. Don't put that much pressure on yourself. Just start with something simple, and then feel that you can repeat things. You can use full sentences or incomplete sentences, and just try to sound like the words that you would normally use in your head. And that might be that with a little practice of writing more in a journal or just on scrap paper, you'll find that those words eventually come easier. And likewise, if it's just your handwriting that makes you upset, then you can always type it. You can find other ways of including your writing, and you can practice. My handwriting was completely illegible as a child, and I was always in trouble for it at school. And then when I started scrapbooking, I was so conscious about my handwriting that I would pencil everything in, and I did everything in print, and nothing looked like how I would normally just jot down a note. And it took me a long time before I finally went, wait a minute, this is not an actual portrayal of my handwriting, and I had to just get over it. And I practiced with the letters that tripped me up, and I didn't like how they look until I was happy with it. And I certainly don't think that my handwriting is going to win any sort of Nobel Prize for handwriting. It's just the handwriting that I use, and I try not to worry if I mess up. I just keep going. So that would be my best advice if that's the part that challenges you. And now I use the rest of this page and how I'm going to finish the embellishment to help with that bit of storytelling. I don't want to take the attention away from the details of the photo and then the story that I've written next to it. I want to include things that are still my style, but things that will complement my page rather than take all the attention away from this central point. I need my title still, and I hope that my title can link into my journaling and a little bit of glittery embellishment. My title with the letter stickers from that same Hello December collection fits nicely in the space between the journaling card and the edge of the wood grain. That's purely coincidence. I didn't measure out, I didn't even plan what the title would be until I'd already placed all those elements. But it's nice when things work out that way. Otherwise, you can just move the spacing around until you get to a good spot. But what I wanted to do was continue this horizontal line here so that you would see the photo, the journaling, and the title all together in one cohesive element. And then I'm going to place some embellishment here. So I've started with that Evilicious sticker, and I'm going to add a few more stickers. And I also want to bring a little bit more attention to the title because I've used smaller flat stickers than some of the normal larger stickers I might use on quite a few other pages. So I'm going to use some little chevron arrow stickers from that same collection pack to create a little bit of vertical movement and repeat that color scheme. Really simple Christmas color scheme with the red, green, and a little bit of yellow in a mustardy gold kind of color. Those might need a little bit more straightening out, but that starts to bring a little bit of attention there. And I have another set of 3 if I get all this embellishment done and I feel it needs something else coming up from the bottom of the page as well. But I'm going to try it just with that set of 3 and then work on some other pieces over here. So just looking for a few stickers that I can include, taking this horizontal line to the edge of the page. And just going to move this over a little bit so that I'm not cutting the S off of Christmas when I trim off the edge what goes over the 12 by 12. And I want to mix these shapes a little bit, so I've got a circle and a long rectangle there, and it's always good to have a few other shapes and have a few things that I can add some simple dimension with some pop dots. So I've got a star that I can add in from the Bella Boulevard sticker sheet, and there's a couple little heart stickers on the December Christmas sheet, and I like this in here, but I'd like something red behind there. So have a look at my red options. I think that these 2 are too big for that space, so maybe the floral will work well, since that is the same flower pretty much that's in the pattern paper that I've already used. Oops, I don't want to cover up all my wording there. we go. And then when I have quite a bit finished up there with different plain flat stickers, then to mix up the texture, that's when I bring in a little bit of sparkle. So I think there's quite a bit of green in that grouping already, so the red would be a nicer contrast. Really, really simple. Then I start to look back at the other elements of the page and look for little finishing touches. So hopefully those stickers there, they're all continuing, well, the ones with words are continuing to tell this story. So I chose the one that has all I want for Christmas and the one that says yes please, to go along with the story that I'm telling about my my grabby toddler Christmas photo. And I wanted to include these to work on these corners, just so that I can then give a little bit of definition to the edges here. So I think I'll be using the brown and the yellow, and maybe what would work best is if this larger piece of paper here has the larger corner, and then with the more narrow, the smaller piece of paper, I can include the smaller corners. And likewise, if you hadn't matted the photo and you felt that it needed a little bit more attention at this point, the photo corners could be used on the photo or the journaling box to finish things there as well. Very nearly done here. I've just added a kind of smaller grouping of the same sort of supplies that I used over here. On this side, there's just 3 elements. I repeated that red floral sticker here, one more of the Bella Boulevard stickers on top, and then added a rhinestone to match on this side as well. And that kind of keeps that horizontal element going. It gives you a little bit of something to catch your eye when you first look at the page, and then hopefully this should keep your eye going all the way across. There's just 2 more little things that I'm going to add, but I don't think there's anything wrong with finishing the page right here as it is. And in those larger rhinestones that I pulled out at the very beginning, this large red one caught my eye as something that could finish this little title column and bring a little bit of red underneath so that the green letters will be framed by red. So I have the red here in the middle of the title and at the end. So I'm going to use just one of those right in the middle at the bottom there. So I have that nice little column, and there is space here so that everything can breathe, but it should all be things that direct your attention to the title. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of sparkle to finish it off. I'm going to use the bronzer shade of the Heidi Swap Color Shine, but the gold also looks lovely with Christmas colors and Christmas pattern combinations. And I'm just going to cover up that photo with a bit of packaging sitting there. And instead of doing a normal diagonal line from the top to the bottom corner, which I do often, because I wanted that emphasis to go across the page in this horizontal line so that you would take in the journaling and take the time to read it with a little bit of luck, I want my ink to follow that same path. Now, I added the ink after I added the rhinestone, and most mists are not going to dry on top of a rhinestone, so I don't panic. I just come back in and take it off. No problem. And that is where I'm going to call this page finished. Yet again, I really cannot stress the greatness of the Scrapbooking from Your Soul workshop. It's really, really good and has all sorts of useful information on what to write, how to write it, and then how to get it on the page. So it covers a lot of good stuff in relation to this week's question. But your challenge this week, whether you've done that workshop or not, is to work on a page that includes some journaling, and in the comment box when you upload your layout, tell us your tips for journaling on your pages. It could be something that you've improved over the years. It could be a goal that you're setting yourself for journaling in 2014. But whatever you're creating this week and the journaling thereon, we would love to see it.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopeasinabucket.com.